Hello friends. You can support me by subscribing to my channel and liking my videos to be notified of new videos. Enjoy! I've always done good throughout my life. I've never had a bad thought about anyone, not even for a single day. My conscience has never been heavy when I lay my head on the pillow. Why did I do this? Why did this happen? I never said it. But life isn't always that easy. Sometimes, the battles I've fought, the troubles I couldn't tell anyone, the things I couldn't share with anyone, destroyed me. I endured so much to not be a bad person. I resisted so much. I tried so hard. It was impossible. They took the person I loved away from them. Before I lost her, I didn't have an ounce of evil in me. But because they took her from me so heartlessly, I was devastated. I was hungry and thirsty for days. My tears never dried. I fought so hard to win her back, no matter what. But unfortunately, they took her from me. As I tell you this story, I still don't feel a single ounce of regret for what I did. Because the people I did this to truly deserved it, and that's how it should have been. I don't know how you'll react after hearing this story, or how you'll come to know me. But know this, no one is as innocent as you think. No matter what, people fight to save their own lives when they're in a difficult situation. I, too, did everything I could to avoid losing my beloved. Because he was my most precious possession in this life. I had no one else. His departure was the end of me. Without further ado, I'd like to tell my story. My name is Fuad. I'm currently 35 years old. I live alone and have no friends, relatives, or acquaintances. I struggle through this life alone. No matter what, I won't lose to anyone. I promise myself this. I met Seblem when I was only 25. The moment I saw Onik, my entire world changed completely. Of course, even before that, I was a decent, honorable, and glorious person. I'd never done a single ounce of harm to anyone. After meeting him, everything became even better. I held on to life even tighter. I started to love it even more. Everything was fine. For 3 years, she and I were together. Finally, 2 of Sebnem's close friends managed to break us up. I don't know how, but she stopped talking about marriage. It felt like the love I'd shown her was going to waste. Just yesterday, the woman who had looked me in the eye and told me she loved me now didn't even want to look at me. Her friends were Yaren and Dwigu. Yaren and Dwigu were her very close friends. At first, I thought they were good people. But then I realized they weren't moral people at all. When I told Sebnem to stay away from them, she'd retort, "But they're my friends. That's not how it works. That's not how it works." Quote. Finally, I proved to her that they weren't decent people, and Sebnem saw that I was right. Her friends either drifted away or convinced me they had. Every time I saw a text or a call from them on Sebnem's phone, we were constantly fighting over this. I wanted to marry Sebnem and have everything to do with her. But she kept postponing it because her friends were distracting her. They were trying to change her mind. No matter what, I was always kind to her. But eventually, I realized that neither kindness nor decency were suitable for this. When they took Sem away from me, I couldn't recover for days. In fact, I was devastated, exhausted, and stopped eating and drinking for weeks. I lost weight, I lost my job, my financial situation deteriorated dramatically. But no matter what, I pulled myself together, though it was hard. Because I had to get revenge. My desire for revenge began when I saw my figure with another man. I knew he did it just to forget me. Yaren, driven by emotion, had pushed him away from me and introduced him to someone else. At first, I was filled with hatred for Sebneme. But later, when I saw that she wasn't like her friends, my hatred for her lessened. My hatred was mostly for emotion and for tomorrow. They had ruined my life. I absolutely had to ruin the lives of the women who had ruined mine, and I did. While I was wondering what harm I could do for her, one day I was talking to a close friend, Yusuf. Yusuf was a very close friend of mine. I was telling him everything that had happened. He said, if you want, let's share their numbers with our friends. Let them mess with them a bit. Quote. I said, no, this won't last long. They'll change their numbers and continue their lives where they left off. Quote. I said, there has to be something different. I'd been living through hell for weeks. I'd been looking at photos of me and Sepni, sniffing the things I had left with her, picturing her beautiful eyes. But finally, I decided I had to stand up and get revenge, so I called a friend who lived in the village of Harmonli. I asked him if there was a religious teacher in their village. He said, there is, but what do you want me to do? When I said I wanted to cast a spell on someone, that's not what religious teachers do, son. Not in this village, but in a village a little further from here, there's a very powerful witch. Let's go there if you want. When I asked if I knew her, Ghoul said, what can we do? Sometimes we need to change the course of our destiny. I said, okay, then I'll come pick you up and we'll go together. I quickly jumped in my car and drove to Murat's village. When I arrived, he was waiting for me at the village entrance. Let's go without wasting any time. It was our way, he said, and I got in the car. We chatted along the way. When I told him what had happened, he said, a bit profanely, they ruined your life. You ruined theirs too. Good thinking. Let's go. It was nice to have a friend who agreed with me without judging me. After an hour and a half of driving, we reached the end. At the entrance to the village was a rusty sign with the name of the village written on it. I knew which village it was. I'd heard about it many times, but I'd never been there. When we entered the village, it seemed very quiet and peaceful. It was also a little eerie. All the houses looked very old and strange. Even though it wasn't dark, there was still no one outside. We followed the route Murat had described and stopped in front of a gate. We got out of the car and entered the garden. Just as we were about to approach the gate, we saw a large black dog tied to a very thick chain. The dog started barking when it saw us. Just then, the door of the house opened, and an elderly woman, around 70 or 80, emerged. When the woman saw us, she said, come in, my children, come in. Don't be afraid, and she went inside. We went in after her. The inside smelled awful and was a bit dark. The windows were covered with dark curtains. We went and sat where the woman indicated. There were strange objects around. I didn't know what they meant. The woman sat down across from us and stared at us. Her eyes were very green. Murat started talking and said, Aunt Audrey, do you recognize me? The woman said, of course I do. More people come here than you. And they both started laughing. This is my friend Fuat. He wants to talk to you. See what he wants. Help him. Quote. The woman said, of course, my son, go ahead. I introduced myself to him, then told him about my experiences and told him I wanted to harm the girls. After thinking for a moment, the woman said, what kind of harm do you want to do? I don't know. May my lives be ruined, may my tears never dry. When I suggested they lose everyone they love, everything, the woman looked at me with a sarcastic look. No, they lose everything, everyone. Even the smallest thing you want comes with a price. When you want something this big, causing someone's death is incredibly difficult. You can't handle it. Tell me exactly what you want, she said. I thought about it for a bit. I mean, I don't know much about these things, but from what I've seen in movies and such, when a Jinn possesses a person, their life is ruined. I said, can we do something like that? The woman said, of course we can. But tell me whether you want them to die or not. I said, think about it for a bit. No, I don't. I want them to be worse than dead. I want their lives to be turned upside down. The woman said, okay. You have to pay a certain fee for this. After the work is completed, she has to pay the remaining fee. When I asked, of course, how much? I told her the normal price. I took the money out of my pocket and put it in front of the woman. Quote, take care of my work. I'll even give you more, she said. No, I don't need more. Just give me what I said. I said. So, how can I tell if their lives have been ruined, that they're sad and regretful? She said, don't worry, you'll understand. She said, I just need a lock of her hair. She picked up the scissors and stood up. The The woman was very small and looked a little crooked. I bent down a little and held my hair towards her. He couldn't grab my hair. He lifted it up. He looked at it carefully and then turned to me. Quote, "Go on, I have work to do," he said, and it was worse than kicking us out. As we walked out the door, I would occasionally look back. There was someone in the window of the room where we were a moment ago and she was watching us. It wasn't the woman, because the woman was standing in front of the door. I was lost for a moment, thinking that no one was home a moment ago or I didn't see her. I turned back. We got in the car and drove away. On the way, Marat said to me, "The woman will help you, don't worry. However, you must do whatever she says, whatever she wants. Otherwise, you will be punished too." I didn't answer Marat. I was looking intently at the road. Questions were swirling in my mind. I didn't know if I was doing good or bad. However, when I remembered this, my heart would wake up instead of feeling sick. Losing him still hurts. I wish I were with him again, if he looked into my eyes again and I could have happy moments with him again. But that was impossible. Even if it's not possible, I will still definitely take revenge. I dropped my friend off at her house and went home. Living in a village is truly strange. I was glad I lived here in the city. But the city had its downsides, the noise of cars in the early morning, the chaos of people. It wouldn't even let me sleep. I came home, changed, took a hot shower, and went to the kitchen. That day, I watched TV until evening. I was so bored. I wondered how this was going to work out, how these girls were going to suffer. I really wanted to know. My nerves were in turmoil. Recalling what I'd been through filled me with hatred. That day, I simply fell asleep in front of the TV, a bed of noise. I woke up for some unknown reason. I stood up. Sebnem, I thought, Sebnem, several times. Sebnem wasn't here. She was gone. She had left me. When I realized this, I sat back down. I turned back to the TV. The TV was still on, and the movie had ended. Another program had started in its place. I turned it off and got up. I went to my room and lay down on my bed. Lying back on the bed, I took a deep breath. For a moment, it was as if Sebnem's scent reached my nose. I didn't want to starve anymore. I closed my eyes and tried to fall asleep, but I couldn't. It was like something was preventing me from falling asleep. After tossing and turning in my bed for a bit, I picked up my phone and checked the time. It was 2 a.m., sir. I still hadn't slept. I had to go to work early, sir. I didn't know how to do this. As I was trying to fall asleep, however hard, my phone suddenly rang. When I looked at my phone, I saw that the caller had no name. I didn't recognize the number at all. I picked up the phone and held it to my ear. There was a crackling voice on the other end. I thought it was probably the network. I said hello a few times, but got no answer. I hung up, put it back in its place, and closed my eyes again. My phone rang again. I picked up the phone and held it to my ear. There was another crackling sound, but this time, I could hear a whisper alongside the crackling sound. I was getting angry. I thought it was a phone holder. I hung up and closed my eyes again. This time, there was a crackling and a whisper. It echoed through my room. I gave birth and sat up in my bed. Only Aisha, entering through the window, illuminated the room. I peered into the darkness, trying to understand where these sounds were coming from, when suddenly I saw a pair of eyes watching me by the door. At that moment, I jumped out of bed and stood up. I immediately turned on the room light, but there was nothing there. I was terrified. I immediately grabbed my phone and called Marat. Despite calling several times, he didn't answer. I was terrified. Had that woman accidentally cast this spell on me? I didn't understand why I was experiencing such absurd things. I left my room and went to the living room. I turned on the lights everywhere. I also turned on the television, trying to overcome my fear. Maybe if there were lights and sound in the house, I wouldn't be so afraid. I relaxed a bit by watching television again. I leaned back, propped my feet up on the small table in front of the sofa, and slowly closed my eyes. I had barely closed my eyes when I started hearing that hissing and whispering again. I opened my eyes quickly. I saw that the TV and the house lights were off. The house was completely dark. I immediately stood up and checked several times to see who was there. There was no one there. I quickly grabbed the remote and turned it on. When the TV came on, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was showing my house. It was as if there was a camera inside the house. I quickly turned on all the lights. The house was bright again. To overcome my fear, I looked around the kitchen, the bathroom, and my own room. There was nothing there. I said a few prayers under my breath and felt a sense of relief. I sat back on the couch and contemplated for a while. Before I lost my Shepney, I always prayed on time. After she left, my life was completely ruined. She didn't even pray anymore. I hadn't prayed once. Now, I had strayed from God's path and embarked on this. I wish I had never done it. Perhaps I would have ruined my life along with them. I didn't know. But still, I had to seek refuge in God for my own protection. I went to the bathroom and performed ablution. I came back, spread the prayer rug in the middle of the living room, and began to pray. While I was praying, the television kept turning on and off. It was as if someone had taken the remote and was fiddling with it. Still, I continued praying without interruption. A short while later, the television turned off. The house lights also went out. I was left in darkness. Yes, I was scared. I was even shaking with fear, but there was nothing I could do. I couldn't stop praying. As I prostrated myself for the last time, I felt someone standing next to me. Their footsteps were right next to me, and I could hear them breathing. I raised my head from prostration. I prayed and saluted left and right. As I raised my hands to God again, something dripped onto my palm. When I lowered my hand a little further and looked at my palm, the liquid had even seeped into my face. I finished the prayer and stood up. I turned on the light and couldn't believe my eyes. My palms were covered in blood. I quickly wiped them all over myself. I tried to wash the blood off my hands, but it wouldn't work. I ran to the bathroom. I went into the bathroom and started washing my hands. As I washed, blood appeared everywhere. After a while, even the faucet started to bleed. What I was seeing was going to drive me crazy. I was truly terrified. What I was seeing, what I was experiencing, was too much for me. This couldn't be. I decided it would be best if I spent the night at a friend's house, so I turned around. At that moment, I was frozen in place. I encountered a creature that resembled me, but looked quite terrifying. It wasn't me, but it was very similar. Its face, eyes, lips, and hair were just like mine. But its expression was quite disgusting. I couldn't move. The moment I saw it, I was speechless. It was as if my body had been paralyzed. He brought his hands to my face. He closed my eyes and whispered in my ear, "We have come to avenge you." At that moment, my knees weakened. I fell to my knees and began to cry. The whispers and confused sounds around me were growing louder, and I could not stand it anymore. I started to pray. After praying for a while, it was as if the sounds had faded a little, but my entire body was still leaking. I felt as if I'd been beaten. I struggled to my feet. I made it to my room, though I struggled. I lay down on my bed and pulled the covers over my head. I closed my eyes. I could hear footsteps running back and forth into the room. But I couldn't bring myself to look up. I just wanted to sleep and end this nightmare. Meanwhile, I'd simply fallen asleep. Even if I did, those beings who had turned my dreams into nightmares wouldn't leave me alone there either. They wouldn't touch me. They wouldn't harm me. But they wouldn't go near me either. Seeing them, feeling them, was already frightening enough. I opened my eyes with the morning call to prayer. When I woke up, I felt completely at ease. I stood up and put on my clothes. I performed my ablution and headed straight for home. Today was Friday. It was a blessed day. I thought maybe if I went and prayed to God, if I sought His refuge, He would help me. But something inside me told me I was on the wrong path and that God wouldn't help me in this matter. Still, I thought His wisdom was beyond question and continued on my way. It was dark. There was no one outside at this hour. Only 2 women were in front of me. I wondered where they were going so early in the morning. They were walking only a few steps ahead of me. I didn't want to follow them. I thought they might be disturbed, so I tried to swiftly pass them. But no matter how fast I walked, my heart couldn't keep up. It was as if the faster I went, the faster they went. Then, still thinking it wouldn't be right to keep up with them, I slowed down. I even stopped for a few seconds. The strange thing was, they stopped with me. As if they were mocking me. This time, I pulled over to a corner by the road and waited for them to leave. But they didn't leave. They just stood there, as if they were talking to each other. I wondered if they were talking about me. Suddenly, the women turned their faces toward me. Even their faces were covered. Only their eyes were visible. Their eyes were pitch black and wide. Both of them approached me. A chill ran through me as they approached. Frankly, I didn't understand what was happening at first. I thought they were probably going to tell me something. But when they approached, I paused for a moment. I couldn't swallow. I was truly afraid. They just stood there, staring at me. They weren't saying anything. I asked the women, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you need something?" They pulled their hands out from under the sheet and showed them to me. Both of their hands were huge, their nails long and black. They didn't look like human hands. They looked truly disgusting. Still not understanding anything, I just stared at them. Suddenly, they showed me their faces. That was the scariest moment of my life. Half of their faces were missing, and they were terrifying. I immediately took a few steps back and ran toward the mosque. They were laughing coldly behind me, terrifyingly. I ran straight to the mosque. When I got to the front of the mosque, I saw a few other people there. I ran so fast I was barely breathing. I entered the mosque before the people around me even greeted me. Meanwhile, I ran into the teacher. Quote, "What's wrong with me? What's all this rushing about? Or is it because of this pain you're in to pray? Don't worry, we still have a few minutes. Go inside," he said, and smiled. I still couldn't answer him. My tongue and palate were dry. I went inside and sat in a corner. Soon we were performing the morning prayer, and people were slowly leaving. I stood up and was about to head to the door when suddenly the teacher called me from behind and said, "Wait a minute." I turned around and said, "Come on." He said, "Your morning rush has also alarmed me. Your morning rush has also alarmed me. Tell me, what do you want to say?" At first, I felt like telling him everything. But then, no, the street was dark, and I saw a dog in the dark. I'm terrified of dogs. It was coming after me. So I hurriedly ran here. As I said this, I clearly understood that the teacher didn't believe me, but I still didn't say anything. He didn't say anything either. "Well, may God help you then," he said. "I'm here if you need anything." "Thank you," I said, and walked away. As I left the mosque and walked towards my house, I paused for a moment and looked back. The cleric was standing in front of the mosque, watching me. Perhaps he understood, because such things are reflected on people's faces. He must have seen the fear and anxiety in my eyes. I tried my best not to let him see it, but it was too late. By the time I got home, the sky had brightened a bit, and the place seemed quiet. There was no one else around. I quickened my pace and walked home, wanting to avoid repeating the nonsense I'd just experienced. I live on the second floor of a 4-story apartment building. The people living on this floor are quiet, calm, and composed, just like me. That's why I love this place so much. My bedroom window overlooks the field behind the building. Sometimes, when young people play football there, I watch them from my window. I've been a fascination with football since childhood. But my father had deprived me of all the fun and beauty just to put me through school. After a while, my enthusiasm faded. I wanted nothing. Today, after coming home from the mosque, I got dressed and went to work. I'd talked to my friends at work for a bit, and my work had distracted my thoughts a bit. What I'd experienced last night wasn't bothering me anymore. My only thought was the fear of experiencing it again. But thankfully, I hadn't. A week had passed since this incident. At the end of that week, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered the phone, I heard a woman's voice on the other end. Quote, "Take the rest of the money and come over. I'm waiting for you," she said, and hung up. This was the woman Marat had taken me to, Aunt Adele. Quote, "I wonder what happened. Why is she calling me?" I asked. I finished the rest of the money and jumped in the car. I arrived at the woman's house. When I entered the garden, that huge black dog was there again. But this time, it didn't bark at me. In fact, it retreated to a corner when it saw me. Before I could even reach the door, the woman had opened it. When she saw me, she said, "Go ahead. Good luck," she said, Let me go inside. I sat down at the old, dusty, and not so clean Seder table. I immediately took the money out of my pocket and placed it on the table. Here's the rest of the money. But that's not how we agreed. You told me you'd get the money after my business was settled, she said. Quote, your business is settled, she said. What do you mean? When I said, whatever, you listen carefully to what I say. Later, you can go to the address where those girls live to find out if what I say is true. And Adile then began to explain what had happened. The spell I cast for the girls is very powerful and special. I cast it. Although the girls weren't initially affected by the demons who haunted them, they were later surprised by what had happened. I possessed the demons. I darkened their lives. Now they live in fear. There's a constant lingering breath on their necks, the constant fear of death. You wouldn't recognize their faces if you saw them. They feel as if they've been tortured by hell, and they know exactly why they're being subjected to it. Every night, there are beings whispering in their ears in their dreams. They made their lives miserable. Quote, if you don't believe me, go to their address and talk to them, she said. After a moment's thought, I stood up. I didn't say anything. I just said, count your money. The woman said, I know my money is safe. Don't worry, go. If everything doesn't go your way, come back. The woman spoke with complete confidence. Perhaps she had done her job right, but I still wanted to check and understand what was going on. I jumped in the car and drove straight to Dwigu's house. My hands were shaking with excitement. They were freezing. I couldn't think of anything. I couldn't say anything. I just wanted to get there, talk to Dwigu, and understand what was happening to her. Finally, I arrived at Dwigu's house. Dwigu lived in a 2-story detached house with a large garden. Her father was very well off. She was the only daughter in the family. She had graduated from 2 universities and was still unmarried. There weren't even a handful of men in and out of her life. She was a beautiful and charming girl, but unfortunately, my life was ruined because of the wrong she did to me. I stopped at the garden gate and took a quick look around. Suddenly, my gaze caught the chair in the garden. Someone was sitting there. It was this feeling. I recognized it from their hair. I opened the door and went in. I was a few steps away from approaching her when Dwigu suddenly jumped up and stood up. Her eyes were unbelievable when she saw me. Is that you? She asked. Yes. Weren't you expecting me? When I said that, she looked me up and down. She averted her eyes and immediately turned away. She started to cry. I sat down next to her and said, why are you crying? What happened? When she asked, I want to tell you something. Actually, if you hadn't come, I would have come to you. When she asked, tell me what you want to say, I lost track of time. I had no idea what day it was, what month it was. My life was ruined. Suddenly, in just one night, I started having ridiculous nightmares. At first, I thought these nightmares were normal and could happen to anyone, so I ignored them. But then, these nightmares started happening even before I fell asleep. Those beings in the nightmare were touching me, hurting me, and constantly asking, why did you do this? Why did you separate them? I deeply regret separating you. Please help me. Forgive me. Those beings are haunting me. They're making my day and night miserable, she said. When I said, what happened? Tell me in detail, Sensei stared into space and began telling the story as if she were reliving it. I'll never forget it. When I went into my room to sleep, I saw someone lying on my bed. I thought it was my mother, because sometimes, on days when I wasn't home, she would go to my bed and wait for me. I tried to turn on the light from there, but it didn't work. I thought the power must have gone out. I'd come home very late that night, and when I got in, I went straight to my room without even turning on the living room light. I slowly approached my bed. When I sat down on my bed and put my hand on my mother's shoulder, she started to cry. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. I thought she had an argument with my father, and when I asked her, Mom, what happened? Why are you crying? She kept saying, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Mom, I didn't do anything. Please come to your senses, I replied. My mother suddenly jumped out of bed, grabbed me by the throat, and pinned me down on the bed. She climbed onto my chest and was suffocating me. This wasn't my mother. Her eyes were red and huge. They shone so brightly in the darkness that all my hairs stood on end. Her hands were so hot, they were burning my throat. The more I tried to throw her on her, the harder it seemed to get. My vision started to go black in the darkness. But she wouldn't let me pass out. I couldn't breathe either. When I finally wanted to pray, she covered my mouth and looked into my eyes, saying, "Don't do this, or I'll hurt you even more." She ran her long nails over my face. My face was on fire. I could still feel those nails on my face. Somehow, that presence suddenly disappeared. I stood up. I was pacing around my room like a madwoman. I was about to lose my mind. I had had ridiculous nightmares a few days ago. But this was very different from them. I wanted to go to my parents' room and wake them up, but it was very late. I didn't want to disturb them at this hour. Terrified, I lay down on my bed, pulled the covers up to my chin, and began to pray silently. I couldn't hold back my tears. I only closed my eyes for a second or two. When I opened them, there were several creatures in the room. They looked terrifying. Tall, pitch black. They were all saying something. They were whispering my name. I told them to please leave me alone. Please leave, but they wouldn't leave. They approached me and pressed my feet into the bed with their hands. They tortured me. Sometimes they take me to their place, hurting me. I can't tell anyone about this, or I think I do, but then it too becomes a dream. They're stopping me somehow. No matter what, I can't escape this situation. I want to surrender to them because I can't stand it anymore, I said, and went downstairs. I stood up. I didn't say anything and walked coldly toward the garden gate. Just as I reached the gate, he asked me to please help him. But I didn't even turn around. I got in my car and drove towards Dorka Yaren's house. Tomorrow was staying in a detached house. He was the only one with his mother. His father and brother had died in a car accident a few years ago. His father had also been employed before his death. His mother also worked. But I didn't know exactly what he did. I checked around, went through the garden gate, and arrived home. I knocked a few times. Although it was a little late, the wounded mother answered the door. Yaren's mother was a very well-groomed and attractive woman. But now she had changed significantly. Her hair had turned gray, she was thin, and a bit saggy. When I said to her, "Hello, good day, I'm Yaren's friend. I'm here to visit her. Can you call her?" She said, "My son isn't feeling well tomorrow. He hasn't been out of bed lately. The doctor just left and said he shouldn't have visitors today." When she asked if it would be okay if you came later, she said, "Auntie, I'm from far away. If possible, just for a few minutes," I said, and she said, "But please don't tire my daughter too much. She's not feeling very well anyway." Quote. But even as I said these words, she felt a little stiff. I could tell from her words and actions that the girl wasn't well. The woman and I went to Yaren's room. "Open the door. Come on, son." She passed and followed me into the room. She was in her bed. I couldn't remember her with my eyes when I saw her. She had completely collapsed. She was so thin. You could see her bones. She was staring into nothing. Her eyes were just staring. Her mother stroked her hair and said, "Honey, look, your friend is here. Come on, pull yourself together a bit. Come see you." Quote. Yaren turned her eyes to me. When she saw me, she sat up in bed. She held out her hand to me. But I had no intention of taking her hand. Only her mother was with us, and I didn't want her to misunderstand. "Hello, Yaren, I'm here. I wanted to visit you. We haven't seen each other in a long time. Not with you." I sat on your bed. You held my hand tightly. Her hands were shaking. The woman said, "Let me get you something to drink, son," and I left the room. "What happened? What's this state of yours?" I don't know what I said. "I'm in this situation because I separated you. Look at the state I'm in. My days are numbered. I can't stand those beings touching me, hurting me. They drag me by the hair every night. Ants crawl in my head." She said, "I'm going crazy," and grabbed her hair in her hands. Her eyes were crazy. "I'm scared. I can't stand it anymore. Please help me," she said, and started to cry. I couldn't say anything to her. It didn't hurt me one bit. I was proud to be safe. These two women caused me tears for weeks, days. They made me hate their lives. My soul ached. My heart was pounding. I wanted to say, "Relive those days too. You deserve this." But I chose to remain silent. She held her beloved in front of her. Quote, "I'm begging you. Forgive me, help me," she said. I slowly stood up, and just as I was about to walk out the door without saying a word, she came again. Quote, "Come take me," she said. I turned around and looked at her. She pointed to the corner of the room. There was nothing in that corner. There was only the punishment for her evil deeds. This was how he was supposed to receive retribution for the evil he had done. When I turned around and asked, "What's there? What are you afraid of?" He had sharp nails and long black hair. He smiled and came to me. He would touch me. He would hurt me again, break my soul, and take me to his home where he would treat me like a slave. You can't see it, but he's right here with me. Just a few steps away. He looks into my eyes, calling me. I wanted to commit suicide many times. I didn't let him. He won't let me tell anyone else either. They'll probably torture me again for telling you this. Every night, he drags his long nails over my face, my back, my chest. He does everything to hurt me. He says you're getting retribution for your evil deeds, but I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything, he said. He was still talking. I opened the door and went out. I walked quickly toward the front door. When his mother saw me, she said, "Son, what happened? Why did you leave in such a hurry? I was getting something to drink for you, but I didn't listen and didn't stop." I left the house quickly and walked towards the garden gate. My heart was beating wildly. I turned back for a moment and looked back at the house. I saw him standing at the window of his room, staring at me. Behind him was a black shadow. From there, I got into my car. I took a deep breath, and this wasn't all. I continued on my way. My phone rang on the way. I couldn't believe my eyes when I looked at it. It was Sepnandi. He said he wanted to meet someone. When I said, "Okay, I'll come wherever you want," he said, "Come to the cafe where we always meet. I'll wait for you there." The joy inside me couldn't contain itself. It was like butterflies fluttering inside me. I drove there at full speed. I got out of the car and approached the table where we always sat. I couldn't look away. Snan was there. She was wearing her usual beauty. When she saw me, she stood up and hugged me tightly. "How are you? Are you okay?" Quote, she asked. "Yes, I'm fine. What happened? Why did you call me?" Quote, I said, "I miss you so much." I said, "Let's sit down and talk." We talked and chatted for a while. You said you wanted to be with me again and give our relationship a chance. Even though I was a little hesitant at first when I heard this, "Okay, I'm willing. But let's not break up again. Please promise me you won't leave me again." Quote. When I said this, he held my hands, looked into my hungry eyes just like the first day, and smiled. "I love you and I will never leave you. Let's go out and drive around for a bit. I want to walk the paths I walked with you again." Quote. I want to have those fun times with you again, and I never want to lose you, I said. I took her hand. We happily went to the car. We both sat together. I wanted to use a painkiller, but I remembered I'd left my keys and wallet on the table. Quote, "Hayeks, devil, look at this. I'm so happy. You made me forget everything right away." I said, "Wait by the car. I'll be right back," and quickly walked back to the cafe. I grabbed my wallet and keys from the table. Feeling happily reborn, I arrived at the cafe door and heard a noise. There had been an accident outside. At that moment, it was as if something in my heart had broken loose and fallen back. When I ran outside, I got the shock of my life. A truck had come and hit the cars, destroying them. People were swarming. People were running left and right, screaming, crying, and covered in blood. My car, on the other hand, was crushed and in terrible condition. I ran to the car, yelling, "Sebnem." But when I got to the car, Sebnem was lying on the ground, covered in blood. I checked her pulse. She wasn't alive. That's when I literally lost my mind. I don't remember anything after that. I blacked out. You opened my eyes, you touched me, lion. When I woke up, I started banging my head from side to side, trying to hurt myself. The doctors saw this and immediately gave me a sedative and tied my hands. I was in the hospital for days. I was out of my mind. All I could say was, "Sebnem, Sebnem." I received psychological treatment for a long time. It still hasn't been done. Did I pay the price for my mistake with the woman I loved? Or did God truly want us to be together? I don't know. But no matter what, I didn't deserve to go through this. Years have passed since this incident. Secnum is gone. My left side is gone. The meaning of my life is gone. I haven't let any woman into my life since she left. I couldn't. Yaren Dwigu is still alive. My lives are still ruined. That's my story. I continue my life as a bad person. When I was a good person, I encountered bad people. Now, I can't do anything for the good people who meet me. That's the story, friends. Thank you for listening. Thank you. I love you so much. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you can subscribe and turn on notifications to be informed about new videos. See you in new videos. Bye. Yeah.